A very warm welcome to everyone. Today we will be discussing the barriers to reading. There are various potential factors which may act as barriers to reading and reading comprehension. Let us quickly look at some of the most common ones. EFD or executive function disorder is something which impairs reading proficiency. Executive functioning skills help us in planning, organizing, managing time, staying focused, and complete tasks. So people who are suffering from EFD may have trouble remembering details when they're encountering a written text, and they will not be able to understand the organization or timeline of a story or any passage that they are reading. It is associated with poor self-monitoring skills, and so it is frequently very difficult for the individuals to innovate or discover strategies for coping with the trouble in reading comprehension. Just like ADHD, autism is another condition where usually the individual has brain processing problems, and they mostly suffer from hyperlexia. That is, they are early readers. They can decode words without difficulty, and we may be under the temporary illusion that they are good readers. But later we understand that though they're reading mechanically and fairly accurately, they actually have very low reading comprehension. That is, they do not understand what they are reading. Students with specific reading comprehension deficit tend to have less gray matter in the areas of the brain that control language processing and executive functioning, and these two skills relate to reading. Dyslexia, another condition that we had discussed in another lecture, is a specific disorder where the readers have problem with comprehension, have trouble fully understanding a written passage because of their slow or disjointed reading pace, and often they cannot even blend the sound and structure of a particular word into a meaningful whole. Poor early vocabulary skill and limited vocabulary, and also the difficulty level of the text contribute to the reading barriers encountered by an individual. Working memory deficit is another major barrier. Underdeveloped working memory is a mechanism underlying reading underachievement. Understanding written language is a complex process that involves at minimum word recognition or word decoding and an understanding of the text that a person is reading. Now, integral to the reading process, working memory then will be providing the temporary storage and updation of the information needed to integrate these word reading and language processes to produce a particular level of understanding, and also will be affecting the basic pillars of proper reading, that is comprehension, fluency, and accuracy or proper decoding. So if there is a deficit in the working memory, then that would act as a major reading barrier. There are individuals who read mechanically and there would be a fair amount of accuracy and fluency, but there is a deficit in logical reasoning. People with poor logic and reasoning skill will definitely then find it hard to read. Why? Because they will not be able to develop the necessary connections between the sentences and within the sentences to bring out the meaning of the passage or even one particular sentence. So they will not understand what the text is describing, leading to poor reading comprehension. Poor visualization skill is another major challenge. If someone is suffering from poor visualization skill, They might not be able to build a visual scenario or a reflection of what they are reading. Until and unless there is a visualization of the passage or the text or the sentence they are reading, then conceptualization won't be possible to the fullest extent. And so, though they might be reading mechanically well again, they won't be able to comprehend the gist or the thematic essence of the text, and so they won't be able to understand what the text is all about. Interestingly, there are contextual barriers as well, what we call socio-cultural contextual barrier too. Juri Lotman had once said that no language can exist unless it is steeped in the context of culture, and no culture can exist which does not have at its corner the structure of natural language. To quote Graham, a description of reading has to account for the notions that fluent reading is rapid, purposeful, interactive, comprehending, flexible, and gradually developing. So it is a very highly complicated human behavior, rather a thinking process, not only mechanically pronouncing and decoding words, but simultaneously thinking that brings two people in interactivity. Who are these two people? The author of the text and the reader. So, the cultural differences of the author or the text and the reader would naturally act as a major barrier to reading comprehension. The majority of the readers, it has been seen that they misunderstand or feel puzzled over the meaning of a text even though they have read each and every word correctly and have understood the individual word meanings. Lack of grammatical and linguistic competence is another major barrier because many people fail to decrypt grammatical and lexical units of language in the text because they lack the ability to distinguish and recognize the words, sentences, expressions, etc., which are used in the text, so naturally they won't be able to read properly. Low word coding skill is yet another challenge. There is a theory called the verbal efficiency theory, proffered by Perfetti and Legault. It states that mere word recognition accuracy is not sufficient to enable fluent reading comprehension, and instead, word coding skills must be increased to an efficient level and automaticity in order for the reader to attentively read a text and comprehend the actual meaning of what he or she is reading. Now, automaticity. If automaticity, as mentioned in the previous theory, does not develop, then naturally reading would be impaired or hampered. So what is automaticity? It is a matter of key importance in reading. It means being able to recognize and process information without really thinking about it much on a conscious level, something which human beings are not born with, but they develop as they go on reading. It appears and develops naturally. It is the ability to look at words and read them aloud without thinking too much. If the readers acquired the phonemic awareness, the reading skill and related comprehension abilities as they read more and more in life, they reach a stage when, as a truly automatic reader, they can look at a page and read the words on it in a proper sequence without hesitations or without faltering or pausing at every step to think about what they are reading. So if there is lack of phonemic awareness, lack of word recognition power, or lack of comprehension skill, then automaticity would naturally not develop and would act as a severe barrier to reading. Faulty reading habits, though mechanical, may also be a major challenge. Some categories of faulty reading habits are eye fixation, where we fix our eyes unknowingly, unwittingly to a particular word because we do not have good training or exposure or practice in reading. So this cripples our reading efficiency because we stick to that particular meaning without paying any attention or losing the ability to pay attention to the full meaning of the passage or text implied by the other words and how they are used in the sentence or in the passage. Regression. Just like eye fixation, it creeps into our reading habits due to lack of training. When you are unable to understand an idea, we usually go back to the part where it occurs in a passage. So there is incompetence in reading and comprehension. We falter, we pause, and we fail to comprehend the meaning of the text. Vocalization. It is a tendency to make the sounds of the words while reading. Lip reading too is faulty reading. We move the lips voicelessly as if we were reading aloud. Subvocalization. Most of the readers sound out words in their minds to some extent. It is also called inner speech. It is a limitation because it hampers the reading accuracy and fluency of the text we are reading aloud. So we have to focus our attention on a larger group of words rather than subvocalization of individual words and phrases. When reading aloud, sometimes people turn the head from side to side or try to read by guiding a pen, pencil, or scale through the text, which tends to affect the quality of reading and acts as a barrier to proper and fluent reading. Defective reading. Defective reading too is a major challenge. It basically crops from two sources. One is ophthalmic source, that is due to defective eyesight like short-sightedness, long-sightedness, etc. and neurological. If we have neurological problems like stammering, alexia, then naturally the reading quality, speed, accuracy, intonation, even comprehension will be affected. Last but not the least, interestingly, there are not medical but psychological barriers. Medical in the sense not physiological but psychological barriers to reading, which are very important, like lack of attention, poor retention. Why is poor retention important? Because if the person is unable to remember they have read in the earlier part of the text or in an earlier text, then the subsequent text reading is definitely affected negatively because they fail to comprehend fully, they fail to relate. Loss of confidence or shyness. It is also important because when the reader tries to read in front of others, they should have confidence, without which naturally one would falter and fail to read fluently. Emotions. Various human emotions like anger, nervousness, anxiety, confusion, sense of inferiority affects reading, just like extrinsic and intrinsic motivation also affects the quality of reading, not only the mechanical part of it, but also the qualitative part of it and comprehension part of it. Self-efficacy theory is very important. Bandura's definition of self-efficacy based on the framework of cognitive learning theory denotes that a person's competence in dealing with his or her individual challenges is very important for a human performance. So it is the personal belief in one's own potential to be knowledgeable or to carry out a task or enforce a course of action to the targeted level, and low self-efficacy therefore would naturally negatively affect reading quality. Anxiety is very important because it affects any performance, like linguistic, cognitive, affective factors, including the pedagogical style, strategy, attitudinal factors like competition, reluctance, and motivation. Everything can be triggered by anxiety. Thank you.